The rules of video game development are constantly broadening. If Watam and Postvoid are any indicators, it is that the video game audience is willing to give anything bonkers an opportunity to impress. Eventide Sigil took the opportunity and disappeared over a nearby hill, boasting 7 entire rivals, 5 relics of incomparable power, and a vast collection of weapons and equipment. Eventide Sigil's primary objective is to have the player utterly lost. In terms of presentation, Eventide Sigil is viciously focused. Environmental models are utilitarian, with a sprinkling of details to develop the setting. Buildings are primarily constructed from thick cubes, and the objects within them are similarly simplistic. NPCs are 2D sprites that always face towards the player. The general citizenry are all identical, and the way they always facelessly stare at the player is deeply unsettling. The rivals are Arthurian knights, with different shields as the only means of telling them apart without talking to them. If the player is openly carrying a weapon, the knights will chase and fight back, while the citizens will try to run as far away as they can. Otherwise, the NPCs do not move. The relics and equipment seem to be photographs, with the resolution reduced in order to pixelate them somewhat, and there is a range of classical Christian artworks that have been similarly pixelated. The textures look as though they'd have been right at home in the earliest days of personal computer video gaming. While the quality isn't poor, the theme is undeniably antiquated and screams the game's personality at the viewer. The sky effects are good, but there is a visible culling shader that probably culls a little too close to the player. As the game opens, it greets the player with a poem. This lets the player know that there isn't saving or checkpoints, since expeditions into the sigil are relatively short. The poem also outlines the player's objectives. Collect the 5 relics and be wary of the rivals. The relics have designated spawn locations, and there is one in each of the 5 levels. If the player manages to collect 3 relics, it is very likely that one of the rivals will have found another, and the player must figure out who has it in order to take it from them. The rivals aren't immediately aggressive toward the player, and will happily chat with them to reveal any information they might know. It's these rumors that the player has to piece together. When was a rival in a location, and is that the relic the player needs? There will be conflict between the rivals, and it isn't uncommon to find them fighting each other when arriving at a new location. The only way to take a relic from a rival is to kill them, which means the player should be prepared to battle. There are guns and armor pieces hidden throughout the levels, with various stats and effects. The gunplay is a weaker aspect of Eventide Sigil, and it is possible to equip armor that massively reduces incoming damage. Gunfights will be reported to the police, and they will soon show up in force to take down any assailants. The police are far too armored to fight, so avoiding them is the most effective strategy. Once the player is in possession of all 5 relics, the player character travels to a forested location with a gigantic structure on the coastline. There are cultists in this area that aren't any more dangerous than the rivals, but they do have different weapons. Within the temple structure is a podium with a golden chalice atop it. Collecting this item ends the game, and the player is treated to some more pixelated, classical Christian artwork. Eventide Sigil is haunted by an oppressive atmosphere. The colors are drab, and the NPCs appear to always be watching the player. The Arthurian knights all speak of death and being lost in this modern world, and the news broadcast that divides the days is a bleak shot of a power plant spewing waste into the air. This strangeness is further compiled when the player finds post-Soviet Albanian paraphernalia and a murderer secreted away in a hidden room in a library. And that doesn't even include the various artwork scattered around. It's grey, but there's also a hopefulness to the nihilism. People go to the cinema and nightclubs, and the educational facilities are full of people trying to get ahead. The church in the suburbs has a healthy congregation and a well-stocked library of its own. This library is the place to find the flower wreath headdress, a spooky object when the people always look directly at you. My major concern is with the game's overall length. While I had previously said that the Eternal Castle's length wasn't an issue, I think that after the initial exploration of Eventide Sigil's environments, determining the game's actual objective and putting that into place doesn't really take very long. There are multiple endings, but that doesn't change the total quantity of meat on these bones. The guns are also very similar to each other, so using any of the pistols is essentially asking to be killed, since they do minimal damage. Taking a battle too far from the car is also hugely risky, as the game closes itself down whenever the player dies, and it's highly likely that the police will manage to kill the player before they make it to safety. This isn't quite as damning as the length, but if you'd be willing to support this developer in order for them to more comfortably explore more substantive ideas, then Eventide Sigil is an exquisite paid demo. Their next game, Hexcraft Harlequin Fair, is wishlistable on Steam right now, and their itch.io page has a few other games with similar auras. As a video game experience, Eventide Sigil has a lucid uniqueness and a focused goal. The player must use the resources the game provides, as well as their own intuition and problem-solving skills to succeed, and there are rewards for doing so, but overall, there just isn't a lot of content to see. It is good content, although it lacks the technical excellence of the Eternal Castle. There are enough components that are high enough quality for it to compete with that game for a player's time. It is possible to finish both in an afternoon though. Oleander Garden's follow-up for Eventide Sigil is on Steam, which, with Steam's return policy, is either extremely risky or promises a wealth of more fascinating experiences. If the grime and vibrant colours of Eventide Sigil were too much for you, then you might want to stick around. Capcom's sterile rogue agent will be making an appearance. I also set up a Discord server. If you have any game suggestions you'd like to see my thoughts on, want to chat about the game creation process, or feel I missed something crucial during one of my other videos, come and let me know.